The Deconstructionist podcast is produced by Nicholas Rowe at the National Audio Preservation Society Recording Studio in Newark, Ohio.
Follow us on social media at www.thedeconstructionist.com, on Facebook at Deconstructionist Podcast, Twitter at DeconstructCast, and Instagram at Deconstructionist Podcast.
If listening to this podcast has benefited you in any way, or if you have connected with it, or it's resonated somewhere with you, please consider making a donation. Even the smallest donations go to help John and I maintain healthy relationships with our wives and keeps their blood pressure at a healthy level. The donate link is in the show notes, or you can visit our website and click the donate tab. All right, welcome to the Deconstructionist podcast. We are your hosts. I am Adam Narlock.
And I am John Williamson.
And today, you get to hang with John and I a little bit because we have some things we need to talk about.
We've gotten some feedback, some confusion, I think, out there that we need to take care of.
We knew this was going to happen.
Yeah. We have a provocative name.
Yes.
And it tends to lead to a little confusion now and again.
Yeah. So the title of this episode is The Reconstruction. And really, I'd just like to lead off by kind of saying that we knew that that was going to be necessary.
Yeah.
Something that I think we've kind of joked about the entire time is, we wanted this podcast to be called the Deconstructionists Reconstructionists Podcast. It's just iTunes wouldn't allow it. My marketing brain wouldn't allow it.
It's too long.
But it is necessary.
Yeah. And we'll get into this a little bit deeper, but depending on who you talk to, and a lot of the philosopher friends that we have out there, would make the argument that Reconstruction is part of deconstruction, and we'll get into that today. So we'll explain what we mean by that.
But we call ourselves the Deconstructionists.
Right.
And that leaves us open to misunderstanding.
Yes.
Because, okay, let's start with this.
Which
John,
we kind of enjoy.
John, I want to ask you a question.
Go for it.
What do you think most people believe we mean when we say we are the Deconstructionists?
I think they think that we're probably a couple crazy kids who don't really believe in much, and we are all about just lighting the entire structure on fire.
So like a youthful anarchist,
yes,
listening to a lot of punk music.
Yeah, just burn that mother down.
And, like spray painting stuff and just knocking it all down.
Yeah, anti-Reagan shirts, Wait, is that an old reference?
Because, okay, if you were to ask me the same question, like, what do I think people mean when they consider our title Deconstructionists? I think it's the same thing, but at the same time, I think there's this angst within both the church and within like what we'll call like the spiritual, they're called the nons. All the research shows that there's this incredible just rise of this class of young people, millennials, whatever you want to call them, that are just disassociating.
Yeah.
Completely disassociating. And within that class of people, this word, they take this word deconstruction and they go, yeah, my life isn't the way I thought it was going to be. Yeah, what my parents gave me isn't working.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. No, I'm not an atheist, but I'm not Christian or Buddhist or... I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
The problem I have also with that is I think that people in general have, at least the older generations anyway, have this false idea of the millennials or even the generation slightly before them, where they see them as kind of this seeking but never finding, these almost like new age hippies, where they're like, well, I'm spiritual but I'm not religious,
like gypsies,
yeah,
like vagabonds,
non-committal,
yeah,
and kind of uninformed. But at least in our experience, I would say that the people that we've talked to, that we've spoken with, are anything but that. There are people who are hungry, that are intelligent, that are well-informed, well-read, who are digging into anything that they can find. They're just looking for a third option, because the only options they've been presented with are either, this, as you said, this inherited spirituality that just doesn't work anymore,
right,
or nothing.
Right.
And obviously they're not ready to commit to nothing at this point. They're spiritually curious for a reason.
Oh, that's a great phrase. Spiritually curious.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, it's almost a spiritual agnosticism.
Yeah.
Where it's like, not like the pure agnosticism, where pure agnosticism is sort of a refusal to ever commit to any sort of knowledge. Right? I mean, nobody's really purely agnostic. I mean, ever.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not downgrading anybody that claims a sort of agnosticism, because you get to define that if that's you, and that's fine. Sort of like, there's no pure atheist, because to be a pure atheist is to have omniscience and to know for certain, A, what God is, and B, that God isn't. Okay? Some of these new atheists try to go there, but there is this huge constituency of others, the nones, the nuns, these millennials, the spiritually curious, the spiritually agnostic, the I don't freaking know, quit trying to put a name on me.
Right.
I think that's who we're speaking to.
I think you're right.
And I think that there's more and more and more of them, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point before we started recording, and I hate when we do that.
I love it. I love that
like,
you even remember it.
Yeah,
I'm just rambling.
Oh man, we just wasted that. It's like when crappy DJs are always like, wait, save it for on air.
Yeah. Wait.
No, but I think you made a really cool point, a really interesting point about a couple people that we look up to who are kind of I don't know, recently kind of almost against this term deconstruction but they're almost speaking entirely about deconstruction, but just using different terminology.
Oh, man.
It's like, I don't care what you call it, man.
Yes.
You can call it emergent Christianity, fresh expressions, Reformation, your journey, whatever you want to call it. Like, we're talking about the same thing, right?
Can I read you a quote from my journal? I had to just pull.
Please.
Pull
Are these going to be the inner thoughts of Adam Narlock?
I haven't done this before.
Are those Striper lyrics?
This was not planned. But
that'll make sense to everybody way later.
We're not unpacking that for you.
No.
So based on what you just said, so this is a thought that I had, and I had to like rip my journal out and grab my sweet pen and write this down, because I was like, you know what? I think a lot about what we do on a regular basis here, John, and I don't want to be misunderstood, but I'm fine with being misunderstood. I'm totally fine with it. I really don't care about being clear. It's not about being clear.
You and Kierkegaard, man.
Yeah, God, I love him. Dude, he really is like
your spirit animal?
Yeah, my spirit animal. But like, okay, so here's a quote out of my journal that like, this is what hit me as I was reading this atheist philosopher, Luke Ferry. And I'm thinking about this project that you and I are on here, man. And here it is. Quote, "We don't need to dismantle orthodoxy. We need to introduce it to the dance partners of mystery, negative theology, and imagination." And I think that's what I'm trying to do here. Like, I'm not trying to rip everything apart and say that there's no place for orthodoxy.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Who decides what is orthodox?
Right?
I just kind of want to forget about all that right now, because that sounds great.
Yeah.
But if you really start pulling that apart, all you have is a lot of opinions and a lot of human beings trying to hang on to control. And I think that needs to be challenged. And I think it's always been challenged. And if you read through the history of religion, there were always challenging voices. There were always these minor chords. There were always these dissenting choruses of people speaking against the people that thought they had it all figured out and patented and packaged and the approved message and the corporate line and all that kind of stuff. There was always people within the stream speaking against that. And I think that's kind of what you and I are embarking on.
Yeah, I think it's funny because we keep coming back to the fact that, especially when it comes to scripture, for example, like, the Christian Bible, the only way we can talk about God is through metaphor because we're talking about something that we cannot grasp onto.
Right.
And so it's like, we always say it's like this or it's like that because that's the closest we can possibly come.
Yes.
And there's a great quote, and I cannot remember who said it, but there's somebody who said, as soon as we've figured out God, then we're clearly talking about something else.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. So to get to the point here, guys, this is going to be an episode where we just start to talk around, and that we're going to do this from time to time. We're going to start to talk around this idea of deconstruction. In this episode, I just want to start off by saying deconstruction is not, nor should it be, a negative. Deconstruction is not, nor should it be, a negative. Rather, it is an affirmative. It's an affirmative of mystery. It's an affirmative of something more than knowledge. It's an affirmative that there is more. Deconstruction is not a negative. Deconstruction asserts that the truth cannot be seized or possessed. Deconstruction asserts that the divine cannot be seized or possessed. Deconstruction is when new doors open and our spaces grow larger. We transcend, but as Richard Rohr would say, we also include. We move on, but as Richard Rohr would say, we don't disdain where we were. A lot of you listening need to hear that. You don't disdain where you were. You don't disdain the people that you associate with where you were. Or as Jack Caputo would say, it's not a matter of becoming more of who you are now or becoming more of who you used to be. It is a becoming something new. It's a metanoia. It is a new creation.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that this is something we've mentioned in, I think it was our first episode, the deconstruction episode, I think, where we talk about it's important to have structure and rules early in life. All right, so as Richard Rohr would say, so that you at least have a goad to kick against. Structure is important as you develop. And, I think
What do you mean by a goad to kick against? I always think of that. I want to know what you think. Like, when you think of a goad to kick against, like, give it the existential grit of, like, telling our listeners, like, what you mean by that.
I think you don't truly know what to question unless you have some rigorous, rigid kind of structure in place beforehand. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I think what he means is that you start out with this intense, rigid structure, and then when you're a little bit more developed later in life, then you have the development mentally, spiritually, to kind of start picking things away that you don't necessarily need. You kind of kick the training wheels off the bike, and that's kind of always the way I've looked at it. I don't know.
It's kind of that old adage of first you need to learn all the rules so that you can learn how to break them.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So I mean, we can even look at and I think maybe either you or Jason may have mentioned this in a previous episode. But
I miss that guy.
I know. We're going to get him back. But going back to my thought, I think scientific studies show that the human brain isn't fully developed until the mid-20s, or some even argue, some scientists even argue the early 30s.
In my case, it was at least the early 30s.
Mine's still developing, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, but specifically the area of the prefrontal cortex in your brain. So what that part of the brain does for you essentially is it's responsible for things like complex planning, decision-making, impulse control. We all know that's a big one, especially for teenagers.
Oh, Lord.
Risk management, personality development, and so on. And so this is the reason that we don't teach our kids about complex interpretations of Scripture, just the same as we don't start them out with calculus,
Dude.
You got to start with addition and subtraction and
Or like,
division.
what about chaos?
Oh my gosh.
Like chaos theory. So Catherine Keller is somebody that we should definitely try to interview on this show. If you don't know who Catherine Keller is and you're an experimental spiritualist, you definitely need to check her out. She essentially likens chaos theory and cosmology. She uses this term chaosmology, where there is a tension between total chaos and total order. And out of the tension between total chaos and total order emerges all new creation. It's bizarre. Nobody understands it.
Right.
What we need more of is quit trying to find the goal. Quit trying to find the answer. This is not a plotted out course. We do not have the goal.
We would have written the book by now, trust me.
Right, exactly. Deconstruction is not just a negative. It is an affirmative. It is an affirmative that there is more, and we don't know what that is, but we are making room for it.
Yes. And I think the other important thing to note is that for a lot of you out there who find yourselves in what we would call deconstruction, a lot of people who are kind of fighting against that urge to ask questions, to start to what we would call deconstruct, a lot of that is just human ego, because the human ego prefers anything.
Totally.
Just about anything, as Richard Rohr would say, to falling or changing or dying. It's the part of you that loves the status quo, even when it's not working, and it attaches to past and present and fears the future. I mean, when I read that the first time, it's when I first started my journey, and I mean, that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think that's completely true. I think a lot of times, a lot of authors out there that, especially a lot of people that we've been reading lately, talk again and again about the fact that outwardly we try to say, like, look, we've got it all together. This is what we believe. We join this community.
Here it
church.
is. This is it.
Yeah, but
beware of that. This is it.
Yeah, we've got it figured out, But deep down, the fact of the matter is, we're already doubting. In one regard or another, and that's all we're trying to say is like, look, like there's already a crack, there's already a leak right there. We're just trying to point it out, and what we're trying to say is we're not trying to say like, hey, everybody's freaking out, everybody is going through doubt and struggle. That's not what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say is it's already a part of the process. It's built into the mechanism.
Yeah, it's not that we're trying to convince you to doubt. We just know you are already. And so much of this certainty that is just rampant in our culture. Peter Enns talks about the sin of certainty, and Greg Boyd talks about the benefit of the doubt and breaking the idolatry of certainty. This is not new. This is not new. This is something that has been going on since forever. In the Jewish tradition, the prophets. Read the prophets. They are dismantling people's concepts of God and religion. Dismantling. Actually, from Moses onward. When Moses encounters the burning bush, and he's like, who are you? God will not allow himself to be named. Because all of the gods back then could be named, and to name a god was to own a god. God didn't allow himself to be named. It became a part of the Jewish heritage. God could not be named. But then they finally start to make not just images, but temples, and there's a process, and they fall in love with the process, and they find idols within the revelation of God. And the prophets are always coming along saying, you are screwing this up. You've got it wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. But then let's go outside the Christian tradition. Let's look at Socrates. All Socrates did was walk around and tell people they had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So this tradition of doubting, this is not new.
No.
I mean, it's just, yeah.
There's a book that, oddly enough, my mother-in-law gave me. She read the title, I think, and was like, this sounds like it might be good.
She's a lovely lady.
She is, and she could not have been more correct. I'd never heard of the guy. His name's John Ortberg.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
And it's a book called Faith and Doubt, and he has a line in here where he's talking about the idea of certainty. He's like, there's one road to certainty through a door marked death. And it's like,
did he drop the mic after that?
He should have just ended the book right there
say
on
that
page
again.
30.
Hold on. We just bantered a little bit. Say that again.
There is one road to certainty through a door marked death.
What does that mean?
Basically, the only way you're ever going to know for certain anything is once you die.
That's it.
So either you're going to die and nothing's going to happen, and so all the atheists are correct, or you're going to die.
Which doesn't sound so bad.
Yeah, you're just going to go to sleep.
That's it.
Or you're going to die and there's an afterlife, and we're going to find all the Lutherans were totally right. You know? But, or, you know, because I think the argument he's making in the paragraph prior to that is, you know, he was raised Baptist. And so the Baptists were raised, Southern Baptists were raised to believe that some of the Lutherans would make it in with Martin Luther, and some of the Methodists would make it in, you know, and some of the Catholics would make it in.
I'm getting sick right now just even hearing about this.
Yeah. And so it's like, so there are all of these groups, subgroups.
Somebody
out
knows
there.
what in is.
Right.
I mean, like what?
They're convinced.
Yeah. Okay. You know? Oh, you know.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So the point he's making is the only way any of us are truly going to know is once we die. So I just thought that was an interesting quote. But one of the things Greg Boyd also talks about, you know, a few episodes back, is he talks about in his book Benefit of the Doubt the fact that, you know, there are multiple moments throughout Scripture, you know, where there are mentions of the fact that not only is it okay to doubt, but there are instances of doubt. You know, throughout Isaiah and you know, and you know, throughout the New Testament,
2/3 of the Psalms are dark.
Yeah,
2/3.
You know, I mean,
full of questions.
We have a disciple whose nickname was Doubting Thomas.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
I mean, Mother Teresa spent a decade in the darkness of doubt.
Yeah.
Wanted to get her letters burned that she wrote during that time because she was afraid of what people would think. If you're listening to this right now and you are not the skeptic going, what are these guys all about? I want to figure out what... Listen, I want to talk to our dedicated listeners. I want to talk to the people that identify with a feeling of homelessness. They identify with a feeling of deconstruction that was thrust upon them that they couldn't help. It wasn't a luxury for them. If you're listening to this and deconstruction was not a luxury for you, but it was something that you woke up and found yourself in, I just want to talk to you for a second. Is deconstruction a negative? Here's the deal. You begin this process of deconstruction the moment you begin to realize a few things. Number one, you begin to realize that there's this trauma that's happened to you. Something has happened to you. Somebody that you depended on has had a complete failing. The curtain has been torn, and not in like a, yay, Jesus, it's Easter, the curtain's torn kind of a way. The curtain has been torn, and your entire process, your entire structure, your entire reality now feels false. Congratulations, you're deconstructing. That's you. You can relate to that. Maybe it was a pastor, maybe it was your mom, maybe it was your dad, maybe there was an affair or a divorce or a betrayal or something like that. Sometimes deconstruction is just thrust upon you and you have to start asking questions. You don't have a choice. Maybe that's you. Maybe you woke up one day and by the grace of whatever, the grace of God, the grace of the divine, the grace of the universe, the grace of whatever, you realized that your own ego is operating within a ton of biases, that you are your own worst filter, that you are seeing what you want to see, that you are hearing what you want to hear, that you are projecting a reality that you want to be, and you're realizing that that's small and that's insufficient, then congratulations, you're in deconstruction. If you've realized your box is too small, if you've realized like me that you are claustrophobic spiritually, that you're feeling closed in, congratulations, you're in a deconstruction. If you've woken up to, this is probably my favorite one, if you've just woken up to a desire for more, I don't care who you are. I don't care where you are. Congratulations, you are in deconstruction. I just want to address all of you right now. If that's you, this is not a negative thing. This is a journey. It moves forward, not backwards. You can't go back. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't. If you're listening to this and you're like, I wish I had never gotten here, I've got bad news for you. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. If it's out now, it's out. And the only way forward is forward. There is no old you. There is no present. There's only the new that's emerging. Thank you for being here. This is a safe place for you. And if you're listening and you're resonating with what John and I are saying right now, talk to us. Email us. We'll give you our friggin' cell phone numbers. Like, this is about people whose worlds are being blown apart, and it's scary, but it's beautiful, right? I mean, how many people have you interacted with at this point that you're just, like, floored?
Every day, man.
Right?
Like Facebook, email, Twitter,
Everything.
Instagram. We've gotten people from all over the country, people from other countries reaching out to us, all with very different, unique stories that, are just flooring. I mean, a couple times I know we've talked to each other on the phone about it and just were speechless for minutes. So
it's unbelievable.
One thing I'd like to point out about Adam has a list here that I can see that you can't, of 5 points, and it's like 5 different ways to recognize the deconstruction you're going through. And one thing that I think is interesting that I want you to talk about is one of them. I would say most of them are kind of self-realization, right? Like whether you were like me, where you just happen to have the right book fall into your lap and it just kicked the door down.
Some kind of rupturing.
Yeah. Or
like what?
Or like other people that we've talked to who were just sitting in a pew in a church somewhere and something just, some button got pushed.
Yeah,
or
man.
We all
know
flipped.
what that is. If you're listening to this, you know what that is.
Yeah. Or whatever the case may be. Those are all kind of like moments that I would refer to as just kind of like moments of, self-awareness or,
enlightenment, clarity, awakening,
yeah,
illumination.
But one of those on there is one that I think is important to address, where it's like life just kind of drop-kicked you. Like you call it the trauma. And I think that's really important because we've gotten a lot of those.
It's the most important one.
Yeah, and we've gotten a ton of people who, whether it was a life event like, your marriage falling apart, or your parents getting divorced, or a death in the family, or some sort of just really heavy traumatic experience,
loss of a job, betrayal of a friend,
life just not going your way.
No, and thank you. I'm glad that you created some space for this. If you found yourself, and the best way you could describe it is you got knocked unconscious. It was a betrayal. It was an affair. It was a lie. It was some kind of absolute fraud, some kind of lie, some kind of absolute trauma that the construct of their reality was built upon, and it had no choice but to fall down. And they're standing in the rubble. The embers are still smoldering, and they're going, what do I do next?
Yeah.
What do I do next?
Yeah, I think we've talked a good deal about how this is a natural part of the process.
Yeah.
Like everyone goes through this at some degree, at some level. And
gut-wrenching.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard it already, go back to our episode number 1 where we talk about what is deconstruction, but obviously we're going a little more depth here, specifically about the reconstruction part, which we believe is tied to this. It's a part of deconstruction.
Absolutely.
And the two go hand in hand, and this process is continuous, right?
Yeah.
We would say it's ongoing, it's continuous.
They're dance partners.
Yeah.
If you're moving forward, the new revelation is always more. The new revelation is always bigger. And the new revelation that is bigger and is more must, in some ways, crush and dismantle the old constructs that we have been living in. It has to. And so the reconstruction, which is actually the point, requires deconstruction. It requires it. It has to have it, because if there's ever more, that means it's bigger. That means it weighs more. That means it has more glory, more heft, more reality, more gravity. When Isaiah is in the temple and he meets the glory of God, he literally says, I am coming undone. Another translation is, I am being deconstructed. I'm coming apart.
Right. You don't have to call it deconstruction.
No.
That's why you can call it whatever you want.
Call it whatever you want.
Your personal journey.
Enlightenment.
Yeah. You don't have to take our term. We're stealing it for ourselves, but you can call it whatever you want.
And like, we're using it quasi-responsibly, but like, I think Derrida would actually appreciate the fact that we're using it the way we want to use it.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is that Derrida, talks about it as a way to take a critical look at your belief structure from the inside, and that's all we're saying. We're saying that it's not only important, but it's responsible.
Yes.
For you, no matter what your belief system are, no matter if you're Christian, non-Christian, or just you follow some other religion, or you're non-religious. It's important. Even Greg Boyd's fresh in my mind, I think, because we read him recently, but he talks about the fact that it's good for non-Christians and Christians alike to question their beliefs,
Absolutely.
to look at them critically.
Yes, we all should.
But it's also important not to live in a perpetual, continuous state of doubt. You shouldn't commit to faith unthinkingly, though, either. That's all we're saying, is we have to be responsible, and you should put thought into it. You should seek wisdom from your elders. You should go to people who have gone before you.
Oh, John, yes. How do you do that right now?
I think for me, the first step was realizing that there were others, many others, long before me who already braved that trail.
Dude.
Like, I'm not the only one out there floating on an island.
Right.
I'm not the first one to come up with this question. And so
I remember when you started to kind of realize that.
Yeah.
Like, because I kind of knew you. Mm-hmm. And I remember you being like, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And the amount of books, the amount of people who aren't even alive anymore.
Right.
What you mean to tell me that there's some dude 1,000 years ago who already thought about all these, questions and already wrestled with all this long before I was even a thought?
It's one of the most comforting things in the world. I think of a C.S. Lewis quote, that friendship begins, as it did for you and I, when you realize, you too? No kidding. I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
That's when friendship begins. And, if there's any small, stupid, sappy desire that we have for this space, this podcast, is that whether it's through the internet, which sucks, but it's also beautiful at the same time, that new friendships would be birthed.
Yeah.
That if you're in a community, like some of the emails that we've gotten where people are like, I don't know what to do. And we've been like, just talk about it.
Yeah.
And then we get the email back, hey, I took your advice, I opened up, I talked about it, and now I've got a community around me in the space that I was already in that I didn't even know was there, that was feeling the same way that I was feeling. Somebody's got to have the courage to come out and say, I don't know about that.
I guarantee you there are others around you that have those same doubts and those same thoughts. And if not, if there's truly no one that you can find in your immediate community, use our forum.
Yeah.
Deconstructionist Anonymous. Wow, we're both having problems today.
I know, man.
It's just 10%.
We've been doing a lot of listening on the podcast and not as much talking, but we got to loosen up those lips, man.
Seriously.
Do those exercises.
my
Unique
vocal warm-ups.
New York. Unique New York. Unique New York.
I love it. I'm going to start doing that before we
How
start.
now, brown cow.
That's the one I always think of.
How now, brown cow.
I love Scotch. Anyway.
Scotch.
But I don't even know what I was saying now.
Well, if you're really stuck in a community and you open up.
Deconstructionist Anonymous. Yeah, you need somebody that's actually in your community. And so my whole point, about this is just, if you live in Chicago or if you live in Denver or something, And, get on any of our social media. Say, look, man, I live in this area. I'm really looking for like-minded individuals that I can get together with. I don't have a community. I guarantee you there's someone else out there.
We'll put something on Facebook.
We'll connect you guys together.
We will figure it out, but community is crucially important.
We all make a different sound when we break. We all make a different sound when we break. That's right. We all make.
All right, so this is all well and good, and I think we're making some progress here. But at the same time, so many people listening to this are starting to feel skeptical. They're starting to identify somebody who's deconstructing. And the question, John, is what now? Where do we go from here? Like, when things start to come apart, when things start to fall apart, I guess the logical question is there any end to it? Or have I entered into something that's going to fall apart forever?
Yeah, and I think that is kind of the common misconception, right? Is that we get caught in this cycle of just never-ending suspicion and doubt, and we're constantly looking at everything, not just religion, politics, the whole gamut, where we're just kind of looking at everything with this critical eye and just being these types of people who are just non-committal to everything.
Right.
And that's not what we're saying. And the point is that Reconstruction, because I think a lot of people who are kind of like a little hazy on the whole deconstruction thing
Sure.
are like, well, what about Reconstruction? Is always just breaking things down. Well, Caputo would argue, and a lot of philosophers, theological philosophers, if you will, would argue that Reconstruction is built into deconstruction.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is that yes, you are taking a critical look from the inside of whatever that system happens to be, whether it's politics or religion or whatever
Right.
that system is.
Right.
You're taking a critical look from the inside, but for everyone, it's going to look a little different. Everyone's journey, starts from a different place.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's journey is a little bit differently. You were raised fundamentalist. I was raised, more evangelical, right?
Right.
So your deconstruction, your journey looks vastly different from mine.
Absolutely.
You would probably say, just within the conversation between the two of us, that you had to tear a little bit more down than I did, right? You had to take a few more things out than maybe I did. The important thing to note is that everybody's deconstruction type journey looks a little different.
Yeah.
And the other thing to note too is that it is okay to find, right? So it's very cool and it's very hip and it's very, millennial, I guess, for lack of a better word, to always be finding. Like, we kind of made fun of this and made light of this earlier, but I'm spiritual, I'm not religious,
Right.
Just walking through life, never committing to anything, right?
Yeah, that's cool. Sure. Yeah, right.
But
yeah, right, cool. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, just not committing to either side. So
Right.
you can't be wrong, right, Adam? If you never commit to anything,
Because you've never actually said anything.
right? Exactly. It's just what we're saying is like, look, it's totally okay to find, if you find something to replace maybe something that you had within your spiritual structure earlier in life that just works better for you now, then that's great.
Sure.
It's good to commit to things. But you should not commit to faith unthinkingly, though. And I think I mentioned this earlier. But it's not to say that once you've committed, that every once in a while you shouldn't, from time to time, re-examine those beliefs, because we need to always, kind of hold it with an open hand and say, you know what, we could be wrong about this as well.
Sure.
And that's okay, because again, once the quote that I mentioned earlier, the only way we're ever going to know for sure, for certain, absolute certainty, is when we're dead.
Dude, it's so true.
So hopefully I wrapped that up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? This is a great time for you to bring up this point. We talked about this earlier, because you're in a unique position, right? So you're on a pastoral staff,
Right.
at the church I happen to attend,
Right.
and if you feel comfortable talking about this,
Sure.
how did that affect you from that perspective? Because that's a very unique place to be.
Yeah. For me, I identify much more with the rupturing. I identify much more with it was too small. and I'm starting to feel like I'm living in a tiny house and I've outgrown it. Like I feel like, like this, spiritual claustrophobia, as I've said from the beginning. And it is a little bit different. And to my role as pastor, as this title that I have, this thing that I have, it has become profoundly awkward in a lot of regards.
To explain that one.
Because going into a system and going into the church where I was always looked at as someone who was supposed to have answers or to point in a direction is now pointing to a cloud of impossible, pointing to a cloud of unknowing, pointing to a mystery, and being completely fine with that. Where I'm a lot of times in a group of people that need certainty. They need it. They need an answer. They need to know that this is the way it is. And I'm not prepared to talk about that anymore. And it feels very, very strange. And a lot of times I feel like an outsider. I go into a system where people think they know who God is. And they think they understand what the divine is. And they think they understand what the journey is and where it goes next and how it's plotted and how it's delineated. And I don't.
Yeah.
Just being honest. Sometimes it's hard. It's hard. So if you're listening to this, one of the things you'll realize is if you've been thrown into deconstruction by a trauma or a truth or something that's happened that's ruptured, you're going to walk into your community, your tribe, your people, and you're going to feel out of place. And the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to start to feel elitist. You're going to start to feel superior. You're going to start to feel arrogant. You're going to start to feel prideful. Watch that. Keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't. We wouldn't have wanted somebody to do that to us before we were ready. It's not your decision when that happens to who it happens to. You may have heard the same truth or suffered similar traumas over and over and over again, and they didn't cause the rupture that they finally did at that moment when you realized it and you said, where am I? Who am I? What is this? Where is this going? What's next? I don't know anymore. What the heck? That was your moment. It was your moment. It was nobody else's moment. It was your moment. It's your journey. And so the thing that I've realized as a pastor is, marching into this place, I've had to change what I think my role is, but I've had to guard my heart against pride. I've had to guard my heart against feeling like I've arrived or something like that and nobody else has. That's completely ridiculous. That's completely ridiculous. It's childish. It's immature. It's competitive. It's dualistic. And I reject it. But here's the thing. I have to reject it not just once. I've got to reject it every day, multiple times a day. I realize that is now a part of my deconstructive journey, this rejecting of a pride and an arrogance that comes with the fact that I think I'm in a different place now and I see things differently. I see the divine differently. I see truth differently. I see the journey differently. I see the scriptures differently. I see Jesus differently. I see philosophy differently, science differently. I see everything differently now. And I'm thrilled by that.
Yeah.
But I can't put that on anybody else. I don't get to do that.
No, I think Rohr talks about that. For those of you, who haven't heard one of us quote Rohr
multiple times,
in at least an episode, he talks. The book that I keep referring to that for me just broke the floodgates wide open is Falling Upward by Richard Rohr. I just think that for somebody who's starting to go through kind of that journey, it's just a really great guidebook if there can be such a thing.
Absolutely.
But what he talks about is you cannot force your own spiritual transformation.
No.
If we seek spiritual heroism ourselves, the old ego is just back in control under a new name.
Absolutely.
There would not be any real change at all.
Nope.
But only disguise, just bogus self-improvement on our own terms. So likewise, if we attempt to force others into the second half journey, it can be met with resistance. So we all know what that's like.
And don't do it, guys. Some of you are out there trying to do it right now. It's to your spouse or to your brother or to your sister or to your friend or to your whoever. And you know what? If you're meeting tons of resistance, stop. Stop. You can't do that.
You know what I think is great? If we just look at the Bible in general, there are plenty of stories within the Bible that talk about like these wonderful victorious moments. But more often than not, the one thing that is easy to notice if you really start paying attention for it is that the gospel really teaches that the very act of doing it wrong is the way we often grow spiritually. It's just a giant book of people screwing up.
Totally.
Like, what other book out there just revels in just getting it wrong?
Right. Absolutely.
It's just the most humbling book. I mean, we talked about that when we did our scripture series.
Yeah.
Where, the Bible made no effort, the authors of the Bible made no effort or no attempt whatsoever to take the embarrassing moments out of that
No, they
book.
didn't sterilize anything. From the first books onward.
Right.
They never sterilized anything. In fact, the interesting thing and the telling thing about the character of the Christ, of Jesus, is that the biblical authors actually took great pains to smear every character from the beginning of the scriptures all the way up until Christ, and then they smeared every character after Christ to almost point to this like need that we all have.
Yeah.
That we can't like manage, that there's some gift aspect to all this.
So what's the moral of that? Do you think the fact that was very intentional, right? To leave all of those examples of failure
right
in the Bible. It's almost like, do you think that God's telling us that it's okay? Like, you're going to screw up. It's part of this. It's part of the plan.
If that's not true, then I literally don't know anything anymore. I don't. I mean, if that's the one resounding truth from the very, very beginning, that nothing is deserved, everything is gift.
Yeah.
We didn't deserve to get created. We didn't deserve purpose. We didn't deserve consciousness. We didn't deserve existence. We didn't deserve love. There's nothing that's deserved.
We certainly didn't deserve Jenny's ice cream, but we have it.
Salty caramel. So good.
Oh my gosh.
It's so good.
If you're not from Columbus, Ohio, or, well, they're in a few other places now, right?
We didn't deserve beautiful Trappist ales.
That's true.
Aged
In
for long periods of
some
time.
sort of barrels.
Before we consume them. With frequency.
Indeed. I'm
I mean,
pretty sure we're keeping it in stock.
There's so many gifts. I mean, as Meister Eckhart would say, love is without why. Meaning there's no point.
Yeah.
Why says there's reason for it. And if there's one thing that Scripture tells us over and over again, and not just in the Christian tradition, but in many of the traditions, that true divinity is gift. It cannot be deserved.
I love it.
I look up to the sky and I see the light in us that resonates in me like a soul lost in the sea. I just soak in the cosmic debris.
So do we want to wrap this up with the hero's journey a little bit, or?
I think so.
Okay. So this is something we've kind of touched on. Dr. Alexander Shia, our good buddy, has talked about this on I think he's touched on both the episodes.
We love you, Alexander.
Oh man, that guy! If you haven't listened to those episodes, plural, go back and listen to both of them.
Yeah, and are they both out at this point?
Maybe. You guys have no idea. Adam and I just sat down with a calendar that was color-coded the other day.
Curating this thing has been painful.
Phew.
We just want to release them all right now.
Yeah. And for those of you guys waiting for some strong, powerful lady voices,
Oh, they're coming.
you guys are going to love this summer.
We did like a summer of women.
We did, man.
I mean, just a beautiful summer of ladies.
And spanning the gamut, too. We
Jiminy
got scientists.
Christmas.
We've got theologians. We've got philosophers.
Oh,
Man, you guys are going to love it. It's so good.
you asked, and
So-
you have received.
You have received. So the hero's journey, depending on where you go, Joseph Campbell, sweet Joey Cams,
Joey
as Pete
Cams.
Holmes would say.
Joey Cams.
Man, that guy, like philosopher extraordinaire. Depending on where you go, they break it down into anywhere between, I think, 4 points of the journey and like 11, I think. So for the sake of simplification, I went with 4. So
The 4 was the right move.
the 4 steps. And the one that we're going to talk about, I think.
And hang on,
the
real
most.
quick. So
Yeah.
before we get into the 4, why?
Good question. I'm glad you asked.
Yes.
So the hero's journey is something that, whether you know it or not, you have witnessed the hero's journey in pop culture, in mythology, so ancient Greek myths.
All narrative. Like, would you say it's universal?
Absolutely
Like,
universal.
as close to universal as we can prove.
It transcends culture. It transcends time. The hero's journey, Joseph Campbell would argue, shows up time and time again since the beginning of time, since the beginning of of people.
Yeah.
And-
Without like collaboration, there's not like
Yeah.
a council of the hero's journey that started convening when the world started. I mean, this is just something that's like this massive coincidence that somebody finally was just like,
Yeah.
"Hey-o, wait a second,
Wait. This inherently shows up everywhere.
wait a minute,
Native American, you know.
everywhere."
Yeah.
All right,
so,
give it to him.
So this is really interesting, and this is something that once you start looking into old mythology, from any culture, you're going to see this pop up. So the
Yeah.
hero's journey, essentially, we can boil it down to 4 points. The first stage is what they call the separation/departure stage. So essentially, there is the hero who lives in a land who is called to some sort of adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And inevitably, the hero there's what they call the refusal of the call. So the hero is like, no, I'm not going. And then eventually, he's kind of pushed into it some way or another. So acceptance of the call. So again, we would kind of liken this to kind of a deconstruction type journey, right? So some of us go willingly, some of us go unwillingly. But essentially, we're going to go on some sort of journey, right?
Absolutely.
So that's stage 1. So eventually, the hero is kind of pushed out of his comfortable homeland where he doesn't necessarily want to leave. You can call that your inherited spirituality,
Yes.
your religion, your lack of belief,
Right.
whatever that the case is.
Yes.
So number 2 is what they call supreme ordeal/initiation. So basically, at this point, the hero joins up with some sort of mentor or helper and generally faces tests or obstacles along the way.
Sound familiar, anyone?
But generally, they're going to face tests or obstacles. Can you think of any tests or obstacles that you have faced along the way? Now, the importance of these tests and obstacles will become apparent later in the journey, right? So obviously, later on, the hero, as he or she is going through these tests or obstacles and learning from some sage elder of some kind,
Right.
is they're learning things, they're learning lessons, they are evolving, they're growing as a person. So that leads into step 3, unification or transformation. So
Man,
the
here
approach,
we go. Here we go. Would you say this is the like quote reconstruction?
Yeah, I would.
Amazing.
So the approach, where they prepare for the main test. So there's always this final test or this final battle or whatever the case may be. So if you look at like Greek mythology, there's always this final beast or
Yes.
sea monster or
Yes.
something that they
I
have
mean,
to.
even in like the New Testament, Revelation, there's the
Yes.
dragon, right?
Oh, good one.
Hey,
Bring it full
I didn't
circle,
go to
son.
seminary for nothing.
You just paid for that degree. So the hero at this stage undergoes the ordeal, which
Yeah.
often wounds them or nearly kills them.
Right.
Now, this can be an actual real physical wounding. So in Greek mythology, someone, maybe they got stabbed or
Right.
wounded in some way.
Crucified, perhaps?
Or crucified. So it could be a physical wounding or near death, or it could be a spiritual or emotional wounding, right?
Yes.
Doesn't have to be physical. And then at the end of this, the hero receives some sort of award for surviving the ordeal. Now, that could be a physical award, or this just could be some grand lesson or takeaway that they have from this entire ordeal.
Yes.
The important thing, the most important part of this is the fourth part. The road back or the hero's return.
Yeah.
So the important thing is that the hero is often tested one last time prior to returning home.
Yep.
Because the whole thing is to bring this puppy full circle, right?
Right.
So they got to come back home again. So when they return home, they return with their award, quote fingers, but they return changed and for the betterment of those around him or her. That's the key.
It almost sounds like the 12-step program in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Odd.
Interestingly enough. And the thing I love about that ends with, I think, a perfect place to end this episode is so many people that are going through a deconstruction, reconstruction are looking for something.
Right.
And here's what I want to say to you. If you're looking for something, chances are that means you're looking for something familiar.
Right.
I would caution you against that, because as the hero's journey points out, I think as the New Testament points out, as this new creation, this born againness, the wisdom of the philosophers, the transformation, call it the metanoia, call it whatever you want, I would say that we must remember as we journey forward that the new won't look like the old.
And I think that fits perfectly with what we're talking about with the hero's journey. It's just that, look, if you really want to break it down, ultimately it's about kicking you out of your comfort zone, right? So you're getting kicked out of your comfort zone, whether you like it or not. Like, you can build all the quote Christian picket fences around your reality,
or
that
whatever.
bubble.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the whole idea behind Christianity anyway is that Jesus wants to pull you dragging and kicking out of your comfort zone, and he wants you to teach you something. So if we look at the steps again, it's about listening to your elders, seeking those who have gone before you,
right?
Learning something from this ordeal. There will be suffering, there will be pain. That is part of life. It's unavoidable. But ultimately, when you come back home, quote, like as Adam said, it's going to be different. And that award, that gift, or as Shia calls it, the boon that you bring home, it's more than just for you. It's for the people around you.
That's right.
That gift isn't for you to keep. It's for you to share that for the betterment of those around you.
Absolutely.
That's all I got.
I think in closing, for those of you that have decided to connect with us, identify with us, stay with us, we don't know where this is going. We don't claim to. This isn't a plan that we've got in place that we are trying to lead somebody to some promised land. We'd be hacks if that was true.
Yeah.
We'd be snake oil salesmen. I mean, it'd be completely false.
Should I take the prayer towels down off our website then? I'm just kidding.
Not the one that you got signed by you-know-who. No,
Old
you-know.
pearly whites.
But if you've decided to roll with us in this thing, just know that we're entering into this cloud of the impossible, this cloud of unknowing together. And that is what we find beautiful, and that is why we need community. And that is what we call deconstruction and reconstruction.
Yeah.
And with that, we invite you to tune in next time. Who knows what might unfold? Gosh, this just got serious.
Guys, we can't even tell you. We literally looked at each other the other day and we're like, so we can't really reach out to any more interview guests because we literally don't have any more slots to put them in.
Yeah,
for 2016.
we're totally screwed on that. I mean, this just went absolutely ballistic. If you're listening, you're a part of this. We thank you. You have helped form this show. If you have sent one message, one encouraging word, one critique, one donation, one anything, if you've decided to connect, thank you.
And if we didn't get back to you, and we try to get back to everyone,
That was a mistake.
Please email us again.
Yes.
We will. We make a really, really like genuine effort to get back to everybody.
We love you guys.
Thank you guys so much. We really love every one of you guys out there. So
Absolutely. And for now, we are your hosts. I am Adam Narlock.
and I am John Williamson.
Until next time, everyone.
Scars and we know, then we glow. Wasted for a week when you get what you seek, but the precious will fade in a grim mystique. But we grow, and we grow. We're in love if we wanna, and we'll get where we wanna. Faith and we bleed desire, and it shows what's below. Staring on my side in the dark of the night, you're flicking on your pick just to see some light, and you're low, but we glow. We're in love if we wanna, and we'll get where we wanna.
Morning people wake up for peace and quiet. McDonald's breakfast people, we wake up for the sweet rush of getting that warm, delicious breakfast right before it ends.
Crush your morning goals with a steak, egg, and cheese bagel or any breakfast sandwich and snag another one for just $1 with the buy one, get one deal. Only in the McDonald's app. Limited time only at participating McDonald's. Valid once per day. Must opt into rewards.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.